literacy block. Students within each class present their teachers with a wide range of literacy experiences, knowledge and skills. And this provides a significant challenge for teachers because they need to ensure that all students are provided with knowledge and skills to continually improve their literacy. Are literacy blocks the answer? Well, that's what we're going to explore today. Learning blocks can give classroom teachers scope to implement the components of an effective literacy program, including ongoing assessment, targeted and or differentiated instruction, and student-based, open-ended activities that encourage higher order thinking. Time is something that as a teacher we need to learn how to manage very effectively. So a literacy block can help navigate some of those time issues. Effective instruction begins with careful planning as well as an understanding of what learners need. So one of the basic needs for students is time. So learning cannot be rushed. Students require adequate amounts of time to consolidate their skills and reflect on their accomplishments. So the more opportunity students have to learn, the more likely it is that they will do so. And a literacy block gives a framework to help organise that time. So timetabling is complex and you need to be able to utilise different ways to account for English and literacy learning. The literacy block is just one planning tool that you can use to organise English curriculum. Of course, you need to supplement the literacy block with planned time for reading to the whole class. Perhaps it might be separate from things like literature circle activities or independent reading, or some of those things can be built in as well, or extended writing, for example. You can supplement your planned reading and writing activities by making the most of incidental opportunities for teaching skills such as comprehension. And so here what we're seeing is that a literacy block can have a really focused structure, and it can be focused on English curriculum learning, okay? And you can bring in your English curriculum unit into the literacy block, but you can also account for language learning across the curriculum. For example, students might be writing about, say, a scientific report about a particular group of animals. And so you might do some language learning as part of your English, but it might feed into a different learning area. And of course, incidental English instruction happens both deliberately in English unit planning within the literacy block and in other curriculum areas as well. So the literacy block can be described as a block of time, usually 1 or 2 hours of instruction, and it has certain characteristics. It has a consistent and clear structure, a routine that happens the same way each time. High quality interaction between teacher and student, and we'll talk about how pedagogical processes that you've been learning about fit into a literacy block. Pacing, and this will change with different groups of students and it'll change with your experience as well, but being aware of pace is important. Thorough planning is essential, and a mixture of whole class, small group and individual work using shared, guided and independent approaches. Again, this familiar model where we understand the role of the teacher and the student and the responsibility for learning between the two and how that's negotiated. And of course these terms modelling, sharing, guided and applying or independent are really quite familiar to you now. And what we're going to do is have a look at how that models for instruction might fit into a literacy block. So here you might begin the literacy block with a language experience. For example, reading a book. Or it might be focusing on explicit vocabulary or technical vocabulary, for example. And then you can move into a reading part of the literacy block, where you might have some modelled reading, shared reading, guided reading, and independent reading. There'll be a focus on writing, a focus on speaking and listening, and or visual literacy. Yep, I forgot to click with my arrows. These are components, but what might the components of a literacy block look like in a sequence? Here's an example from the Western Australian Department of Education and Training. So here they've kind of divided the literacy block into 3 parts. The whole class, where a common modelled or shared mini lesson happens, and it's really quite a short time, 10 to 20 minutes. And an example that they provide here might be a focus on reading fluency, reading a passage of a non-fiction text with phrasing, or for example, focus on writing an effective paragraph. And then from here, the class would break into small group or individual instruction with strategies based on a skill, interest, need, or something appropriate for a particular, grade that might relate to a different learning area, perhaps a language experience from another learning area. So group 1 might have shared, guided, or independent practice and application. It might be something like echo reading using activity-based strategies with the same and different text depending on the level, or rewrite a sample paragraph using a graphic organizer. Group 2 might engage in something like readers' theatre, or depending again on the level of students, what they might be able to sort of cope with in a shared or independent time. They might be able to rank and order 3 different paragraphs and discuss as a group why they've put the paragraphs in that order. Group 3, it might be a recorded reading at a listening centre using thinking skills and strategies with different levels, or given a topic sentence, they might need to complete a paragraph using cooperative group strategies. Then the whole class comes back together to share their learning, reflect on what they've been doing and what they might like to do next. And this is a good opportunity for the teacher to think about what students have done and what any misconceptions might be and where to next. Now, of course, this doesn't just happen. It's something you need to teach students how to do. So you would need to teach them how to work in groups and what the expectations are. And you would do that slowly over time. And we'll talk more about that. There are many models for the literacy block. So I've got some examples here to show you. And in your Literacy for the 21st Century text, it talks about what a balanced literacy program looks like, and I would encourage you to revisit that. So this is a really sort of personal approach that you're probably going to initially adopt from maybe one of your professional experience teachers, or perhaps you might develop something yourself that you'd like to try. But the way in which you plan for your literacy blocks in the real world will change over time. I've tried a gazillion different ways. But I think what you're learning to do here is focus on what those key components are. What is the essence of the literacy block? Think about how you would organise the physical space and the materials that you would use. They are really vital, those organising type tools that can help you make the literacy block successful. And you're going to practice going from an English unit plan into a sequence of lessons that would make up what a literacy block would look like. You can use one of the templates that we provide for you to think about literacy blocks and how they might be planned and how they go together. But I also might suggest that you actually do some exploring on the internet. Pinterest, for example, if you do a search for literacy block or organisation, there are some fabulous ideas that teachers have shared, in particular about the way in which they keep the class organised. So remember, this is not an authoritative source, so you need to keep your critical thinking hats on. It is, however, full of some awesome, useful ideas.